Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Dev Method. My name is Ricky and today we're going to continue making that GitHub app that we made in the previous video, and we're going to try and make some more reusable components. So the first thing I want to look at is just a really quick review of where we left off. So we were making this component called a pull request, and within that component we had some layout, which is a V stack, an H stack, some text, we had an image, and then we also decided to make our own reusable component called a branch label, which ends up being this thing here on the right-hand side. See where it says fixes login screen, and then the other one for master. So we took a look at how we can make a component. We designed its API by giving it some name parameters here. And we got the name, the app name, the request ID, the source branch, and the destination branch. So the next part is we want to make this a little bit more reusable, or just explore different ways to make things reusable. So the first thing I want to take a look at is actually not necessarily focusing on the screen that this is going to end up being on. Let me go to the bottom here. This is where we have our previews. So the preview provider here is only showing up for the right-hand side. And what we're going to do is we're going to say preview, and we're going to choose layout. And one of them here is size that fits. So we can just get that there. So now we have an idea of what this component actually looks like. Now, if we wanted to, in this case, like add our own padding to this, like an internal set of a padding, we could do something like that. Okay, now we have a little bit of a better idea of where the borders lie with something like this. I'm gonna actually leave it like that because I kind of like that. But the next part here is, let's take a look at the branch label. So what we have currently is a custom font. We always have the text for setting the name here. And then we have this background color, the edge padding, the blue background, and the corner radius. So the only thing with this is that this is a component, so we'd have to fit it within here. And we're not really sure where this text is actually going. So actually this is a string. It's not even text, but you might want to set your own text and put it inside there. So there's quite a few ways to go about this, but what I would suggest is just an alternative way of looking at this. So what we can do is we can actually make a struct here, and that struct, we'll call it branch label modifier, and we'll implement ViewModifer. See there? And then we have one thing that we're going to use today, which is, we'll just let Xcode add it in for us. Not the content. So we do func, the body. So the body and the content. So we're actually not going to define what the content is here. We're just going to take the content for what it is and then give it all of these properties here. So we'll return content like so. Now, what does that mean that we could do? Well, if we were to resume this preview, you'll see that our text styling is gone, and our colors and the font and the padding. So what we're going to do is actually take this right here, this branch label, which I spelled wrong. Here we go. Branch label modifier now. And we just call modifier here and give it a branch label, like so. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a look at the branch label here and make this look a little bit more SwiftUI-like. So it'll say branch label as the modifier on text. So how could we do that? Well, we actually make an extension on Vue, and we define some sort of custom function or method. So like so. And we usually want to return self, but we don't necessarily know what the content is at the time of defining this. So we usually would do something like this: return self modifier, just like how we use down here. And then this branch label modifier. And then we'll call this function here branch label. like so. So it gives it all the styling that a branch label needs. And this is, again, what we're calling the branch label here on the right-hand side, where it says master and fixes login screen. So now I can actually take this like so. And here we go. So let's resume. There we go. Same styling as we had before. Now I can prove that it works with other modifiers labeled on top of this. If I just do another dots and then say like invert color, we should get something close to orange. Yeah, so here's all the colors inverted. So that's actually pretty sweet. So this actually then to me tells me we don't necessarily need this as its own component. We could purely just go with this branch label custom modifier that we now have. So I'm going to delete that component. Go back down here, change this back to text. So it's a little bit easier to read again, because it's not a lot of new types that you'd have to learn. Like if you're reviewing this code later on, you'd have to then go look up that component, change that component. And so this might be a touch or a smidge or a squeeze a little bit more flexible than just wrapping the whole thing in a component just for the style's sake. So here we go, branch label. There we go. Branch label, like so. And let's resume. We should see exactly what we wanted to see before. Now let's just say if we wanted to change the color, so we got the branch label, it's kind of like the default setting for the color. Maybe the master one is like, I don't know, color scheme, color multiply, accent color, foreground color. So let's just say foreground color, orange, and let's say background color, color.orange. Oh, and then we need something about the text color as well. But you get the idea. We can just kind of add more modifiers on top of what we have currently here. So depending on what it is, the style that you're going for, and what kind of reusability you want out of some of your code, especially the SwiftUI code here, there are pros and cons, and you're just gonna have to weigh them, try both of them out. It's very simple to just cut and paste the code, move it around, and refactor very easily. Use this preview here to validate some of your decisions. So now that we have those two things in place, the next thing that I want to talk about is our colors. So the colors actually could be reusable. This is where we start getting into not just reusable for reusability's sake, but we get into the idea of design systems. The concept of a design system goes way beyond colors, but colors is one of those primitive things about a design system, some of the fundamental building blocks to creating a design system. So in this case, I'm going to just start that conversation with you by giving an extension to color. It's not the only way to do this, but it's going to be our way to do it for right now in this little tiny project. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to say a BG for background, and then I'm going to say blue tertiary color. So there's primary, there's secondary, and then there's tertiary. So with the color here, I'm not going to define a custom value. I'm just going to go with the blue that's been given to me by SwiftUI, but I am going to set its opacity for the tertiary here. So now this color, which I'm using inside this ViewModifier, I'll just change this now to be the BG tertiary. Now, just to give you an idea of some of the other colors, what we might want to do, and BG is really the significant part here. The semantic part is saying that it's for background. We could spell it all out. That's up to you. I'm just putting BG here just so that it's quicker for me to type. And now instead of BG tertiary, let's do a secondary. And then we'll do a primary. And the only difference I'm making here is just the opacity between all of these. So you don't have to follow this same pattern. You get to pick and choose these colors how you'd like. Team up with your designer or designer friend and see what some of these might be. You can also look up some of the semantic colors that are provided by iOS as a great example too. But let's just try a couple. So we'll do BG blue, primary, resume, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, see, it just makes it completely blue. So let's do secondary. Okay, it's getting a little bit better, but the color wouldn't necessarily be right. Like the foreground color here would maybe have to now be like a white of some kind to see through that. But we don't want that. That doesn't match our design. So let's do tertiary with the blue text. And save. Oh, I made a mistake. 0.15. So the opacity is going to be a value between 0 and 1. So that was basically the same as primary a second ago. All right, there we go. So that does that. So that's at least giving us an idea of how we can start making semantic colors and define them as our own. Now, we don't necessarily support light and dark mode with this, although since we're using the built-in blue, light and dark mode will actually be adjusted for us in SwiftUI. There's more steps here if you want to see more about the custom colors and light and dark mode. Why don't you go ahead and leave a comment below letting me know that that's something you'd like to see. But another way to go about this too is that we don't have to necessarily just say the blue. We could just simply say that it's a background color. That way we don't necessarily collide with any other names that we have here. So if you wanted to just call it blue, that's going to collide with the SwiftUI built-in blue. But putting BG in there is probably not as common, at least that I've seen in any of the Apple documentation for the APIs. They're usually fully spelled out, so it would say like background on it. So that's my way of separating it out from what's built into iOS. So I have that there. Now let's move on to one of the last topics for today, which is going to be this image. So the last time we had the image, we didn't have a great way of resizing it and making it smaller. So we're going to do that now. So the first thing that you have to realize here is since this is a image asset, it's taking its size native to the image size itself. So any changes we want to make to its bounds or its frame, we have to actually do this, which is resizable. So we declare the image as resizable. Currently right now, that's not necessarily going to do anything for our component other than what you see there. Doesn't necessarily get us too much further. There's a couple more steps. The first one is we're actually going to define a static height and width. And that is going to be 44. And I'm going to say the alignment is center. You'll see it's the guiding marker of the center of the view. So we'll do that there. So that's great. So now we're getting somewhere. It's more along the correct lines, or the correct size of what we want. Now the last thing I want to do is actually just make it rounded. I'm only doing this because the background color there it doesn't have an alpha channel. It doesn't have like a see-through transparent layer on the background. Hopefully your icons will already have that, but in case they don't, you might need to put on some sort of corner radius. Now, what would you put there? Since we have a static height and a static width that are both the same, we're going to actually take the height and divide that by 2, which gives us 22. So that'll give us there our circle. There's a couple other corner radiuses here if you want to take a look, but there's like one with anti-aliasing, yes or no. So you could choose which one you'd like. I'm just going to go with what we had there a second ago, which is 22. Okay, we're getting closer. It's not exactly perfect. The icon actually should be way smaller. We can make that adjustment very quickly, actually. So let's do that. Let's just cut it all in half. There we go. Oh man, might be even smaller that we need to make that. Let's try, let's say 16. Yeah, okay. That looks a little bit better. Yeah, that's pretty close. We can stick with that for now. All right. Great. That looks good. So thanks for catching the video today. If you guys would like to take a look at the previous video, I'll have that as a link in the description. If you guys have any questions or comments, if you want to give a like, go ahead, or write something in the comments, give me some feedback about what it is you guys would want to see next. Thanks for watching.